TikTok, it's time to rock. These are strange times for the 5150 show, aren't they? Strange only in the fact that we're doing all these weird times now, but certainly not strange because of the guest that we have. Maybe because of the co-host I have, but certainly not because of Alan. How are you, Alan?
Hi, guys. It's such fun to be with you guys again.
Look, it's our pleasure to host you.
Have you on. Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
It's our pleasure to host you. It's our
it's all
pleasure.
Bit,
We'd love
it's
to.
all a bit round the wrong way, isn't it? Tonight,
Yeah.
You know, it's 10 o'clock at night for me. This is not right at all.
Well, we're going to be doing this time slot a little bit more often, guys, especially if you're interested in the ZoSo show that we are proud to present to you guys from the channel. It works well for Alan, works well for me. It's 9 o'clock Sunday morning here in New Zealand, 10 p.m. where the rock professor is. So he finished his last pint about half an hour ago, so he's okay.
Actually, never mind pint. I finished my last poppadom about half an hour ago.
Oh!
Never mind pint. Just returned from having curry with some of my family, my mum and my brother, and stuff.
Awesome,
my mum's
awesome.
house.
Good to see you, Rock Professor. We're looking forward to this. We're looking forward to this one. This will be a good one. We're going to talk about Led Zeppelin 2. We're obviously very happy and pleased to have Alan on. If you guys aren't aware, you know, Alan's been on the show a few times now with us. So we've done some Van Halen topics with Alan. Alan's YouTube link, guys, is on our community page. So go and check out Alan's videos. Give him a subscription and support him there. He's also been on the inaugural ZoSo show with us when his neighbours were partying all night. So, Alan, thank you, neighbours.
What do you do? What do you do when you can't sleep? You go on YouTube. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Come on. Yes.
But we're happy to have you, Alan. So we're here to talk about Led Zeppelin 2. We're going to make a couple of connections, guys. We've got some pictures that we're going to throw up and talk about. And if you guys want to participate in the chat, if you guys are watching the replay and you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. If you want to be a part of our community and you want your page to go up on our community page, email me, message the Rock Professor. Message Alan. If you're a friend of Alan's, he'll get that link and we'll put it up on our page. That's the least we can do for you guys. Guys, I'm going to pass it over to the Rock Professor because he's got a couple of things that he's got to do before we kick off. And in about 10-15 minutes, the Rock Professor will go through and do a shout out for you guys.
Yes, but first of all, we need to shout out to Brad, our mate and colleague, who's going for a bit of a rough time at the moment on his medical thing. But he was on this morning. It was my time, but so it was really good to see him just back on the show a bit and just kind of taking it easy. That's fine. But to see him back on was really cool. So Brad, it was lovely to see you. Get well soon, mate. We're looking forward to having you back on the British Electric Blues show as soon as you can. But only when you're ready. And of course, we should say shout out to Warren as well, our old mate Warren, who's going through some cancer treatment. So Warren, we hope if you're watching this, our thoughts are with you, mate. I hope you're doing good. We look forward to having you back too.
Holly, I got your email. Thank you, Holly. We'll be doing a shout out soon to you guys. So guys, Alan and I were having chats, as you do, over Instagram about Jimmy Page, tagging him into some pictures that have been coming up. one of the great things about Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page that I really, really love, guys, is the amount of information that's out there now, the amount of picks, Alan, for guys like us to go through and work out and get some details. It's fantastic. And when bands do that, you kind of sometimes maybe take that for granted. But I want to do a special shout out to Jimmy Page, because he'll be watching us, and the rest of the guys from Led Zeppelin. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. But the connection that I wanted to make and share with you guys is we all understand and know why the Beano album was an important album for rock music. It had three components. It had the Les Paul, the Marshall amp, and obviously Clapton. And then it sort of struck me in a conversation I was having with Alan about why Led Zeppelin 2 is really important, because of the Les Paul. Led Zeppelin 1, Alan and the Rock Professor, as we know, and we probably didn't know for a long time, the main guitar on that album was the Telecaster. So for me, a light went off in my mind. Okay, so you've got the beginning with the Bluesbreaker album, and then where do we situate Alan and Simon, Led Zeppelin 2, as far as that tone goes and the Les Paul? So that's where I'm coming from, and obviously you guys can take the show anywhere you want. But Alan, do you have an opinion or a theory on that, and then we'll pass it on to the Rock Professor?
Well, I can even dial it back a little bit, because the Les Paul Marshall combination, actually goes back, and the way that we hear it even prior to the actual Bluesbreakers album was from the I'm Your Witch Doctor Telephone Blues single, which was produced by Page. So there are many times, that people there was interviews where the interview would say to Page, you seem to be the classic Les Paul Marshall sound, and Jimmy would always give deference to Eric and always say, no, it was Eric that did that combination. But in truth, it was Jimmy facilitating what Clapton was doing at that juncture, even before the Bluesbreakers album proper was recorded. So Jimmy had some foresight as an engineer to understand what that was about. So that was kind of lying in wait, as far back as 66, whenever that was done.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I think that for me that some of this is about necessity, isn't it? Because he had the Telecaster that was apparently quite an ailing Telecaster. I don't think it was in good shape, and he needed another guitar to replace the Telecaster, and Joe Walsh happened to have this burst, which he showed him at this gig in America, and so he bought it and started playing it, and realised that this would do a really good job on their second album they're about to record, and clearly a slightly bigger sound and thicker sound, and to back it up, but also much more reliable as a guitar as well. And I think that, so, as ever with these things, some of these things are about happenstance and necessity, and not about it just happened that way. The Telecaster didn't work very well. The Gibson arrived via Joe Walsh, and it's like, got it, oh well, that'll do, and off you go, kind of thing. And clearly that's what he used for the rest of his time. But that's the transition, I think, and that's the importance is in that change of sound, and realizing that that it would work for him in this different scenario, and Led Zeppelin 2 scenario, not Led Zeppelin 1. But yeah,
absolutely,
luck and happenstance.
I think what's interesting though is
part
if you have a look at some of the videos where Jimmy Page is talking about that too, I get the impression, guys, and Alan, I'm certain you would know this. Joe was adamant that he took the guitar. As I understand, Jimmy wasn't interested, Simon. He wasn't interested in taking the Les Paul at all, but Joe Walsh made a point of saying, you need to take this guitar, which again, I found quite interesting, because there was there's lots of theories about why Jimmy never used a Les Paul earlier on. And one of the most common ones, which actually has no relevance or truth to it at all, was because he didn't want to be classified as the next Eric Clapton. So that's why he, was not interested in using the Les Paul. But Alan, are we on the right track there with Joe Walsh's insistence on the Les Paul?
At that stage, yes. And part of why Jimmy didn't want it initially, and why he didn't even want to entertain the thought, was that he already had the Black Beauty Les Paul Custom, which he had been playing for quite a while on the sessions. So when you hear Sunshine Superman by Donovan, that's Jimmy playing the Black Beauty Les Paul.
That's right.
Now, of course, it had a Bigsby. Tuning was problematic on it if he were to hit the Bigsby. And it was also a very expensive guitar, and it was a guitar that was dear to him, and he did not want to take it on the road, to America. So that was why he didn't bring the Black Beauty Les Paul. He brought it. Of course, he brought it to the States towards the very end of '69 for the Radio City Music Hall shows, and then very shortly after that was when it got stolen in 1970. So, kind of Jimmy was somewhat right to not want to bring that guitar on the road with him. But, as Simon says, it was Joe Walsh's insistence that he try it. There's a myth that Joe Walsh gave the guitar to Jimmy. That's not the case. Jimmy paid for it. And, I'm sure it was a fair price, which means it wasn't a giveaway, and it wasn't, he wasn't
$300 or something.
Yeah, I mean, and at that time,
$3 million
guitars weren't worth what they are worth now, but it was certainly a fair sum for both parties that were happy with it. And Joe had a couple of different 59s, 58, 59, 60 Les Pauls. I see the question there. I'll jump in from John ZD 351. Did the Black Beauty have P90s or humbuckers? It's the 3 humbucker Les Paul custom Black Beauty. Yeah.
Yeah, the one that Keith Richards used as well. He made famous there for a while as well.
That's right. Except Keith's did not have the Bigsby, but Jimmy's had the Bigsby. And, you can see him obviously using that in the Royal Albert Hall footage from January 1970. And he used it only on the Eddie Cochran medleys of Come On Everybody and Something Else. And he used that, the Bigsby, for that because, Eddie Cochran was a famous Bigsby user on the Gretsch guitars, and those songs are kind of part and parcel with that. But you'll also know that notice on that it's horribly out of tune.
Yeah. Hey, Charles.
Which I guess is, as you say, why he didn't want to take it on tour, because it wasn't that reliable as a
from Jimmy's mouth, he said he didn't want it to risk it getting stolen. And that was the irony, that it ended up getting stolen.
And then it got stolen. Yes.
Yeah.
Is it not a case that the Telecaster thing is about that inheritance from the Yardbirds? Because the Yardbirds had the Telecaster, didn't they? It was like the Yardbirds, and it got passed from guitarist to guitarist.
That particular one, yes, it was a band owned instrument,
didn't it? Yeah.
It was the band that actually owned it. Yeah. So a lot of those stories are saying that Jeff Beck gave Jimmy the Telecaster. It's not really true. It was sort of a backup Telecaster that was brought on the road that belonged to the band proper, and then that was then given to Jimmy to use when he started playing guitar in the band with Jeff. And then another happenstance that kind of also pushed Jimmy in the direction of getting that Les Paul while he was on the road in April. It was sometime around early April of 1969 that he got the Les Paul from Joe. And at that time, Page had also complained. And, again, Jimmy did not have a guitar technician at that time on those first couple of tours through about 1970, I believe, 70, 71. When he actually got a guitar technician, Jimmy was just doing his own work. So he often complained about having to take the pick guard off of the Telecaster, and he was constantly with the soldering iron trying to fix shorts. you know, and the pickup wiring and everything like that, which should be an easy fix. But, you know, this is not Jimmy's purview either. So, you know, he was doing the best that he could. But, you know, at that time, he was having some trouble with the Telecaster. And so I think that was yet another thing that said, hey, here's a great guitar that I'm happy to, you know, start using, you know, and phase out the Telecaster. And, of course, the sound was better, although when it was still early days at that time, Jimmy didn't have the whole thing sorted out. You know, he was using very loud stage amplifiers at the time. He wasn't using it in like the way Eric was using it with the smaller 2x12 Bluesbreaker combo that was sort of controllable in a studio environment. You know, so Page was aware of the sounds that you could get, but not in a live context. You know, so he was just kind of running with that amp and doing, you know, with the and again, we can kind of segue into that because I've given some pictures right at about that time. Some of the other gear that came from the Yardbirds was the Vox UL 4120 solid state amplifier head, and so
okay, I'll put those up now, Al, if you want. Do you want me to put that Vox head up now? And
sure,
okay. Cool,
sure. So that is the head. That's not the head, but that is the same model. It is the Vox UL 4120. It's a solid state amplifier. It's actually a bass amplifier, not the guitar amplifier. The guitar amplifier was called the UL 7120. And it's a very, very loud, very, very clean amp. So, you know, when you think of Led Zeppelin, you might think of like, you know, some raunchy, distorted guitar, but the only bit of you'll see that. So he used that head in conjunction with, at the time in April of '69, the Rickenbacker company had given the band Led Zeppelin had given them some Rickenbacker equipment to try out, and that included that Rickenbacker Transonic, which originally came with an amp head and that speaker cabinet. And Jimmy had changed the speakers changed the stock speakers to Jensen speakers that he had taken out of some Fender amps from the Yardbirds days. And so he put those into that Rickenbacker because the speakers that came in it weren't robust enough, or just not to Jimmy's liking. So it's a slight mod in that cabinet. And then the amplifiers were basically useless, you know, so this is why he ended up putting the UL 4120 from the Yardbirds in with that cabinet. And so the very first sessions for the second album were A Whole Lot of Love. And then slightly after that, What Is and What Should Never Be. And Jimmy has stated that this was the gear that was used to record Whole Lot of Love and What Is and What Should Never Be. And the photographs from Olympic Studios also show that to be the case. So that was kind of something that was not known for a really, really long time. And Jimmy himself kind of had misstated, didn't really know what the Vox amplifier was. You know, he called it at various times a Vox Super Reverb. Yep. Which is not true. You know, and I think he ended up learning, it was a learning process for him to put together the anthology, because I think he actually learned about what some of his own gear was, you know, by going through that. You know, and I'm glad that
Alan mentioned the anthology book, because that's an upcoming show, guys, where the Rock Professor and I, Brad and Alan, will go through and offer you some thoughts. We'll take some snips from that book. If you guys, and there's the companion one as well. If you guys are Led Zeppelin fans, you need to get your hands on that book, Alan, don't you? It's a crucial component for. There it is. There he is. That one there. You got to get that, guys.
Nice. Yeah. Beautiful.
Rock Professor, can you do a quick shout out, brother?
I can. Brother? Yeah, I'll do a shout out to the team in the in the chat. So we've got Gret Zeppelin, of course, first in the chat for a Led Zeppelin show. Why not? Holly Lewis. Hi, Holly. How you doing? Holly's just moved to Nashville, hasn't she? So that's right. I'm just
Tennessee. So I hope you're settling in, Holly. Hope it's going all right. It's we've got John ZD351, of course. Hi, John. Philip Byers as well. We've got some bloke called Simon Williams. No idea who he is. Mark FX. Got Greg Roberts Tune. We've got who else? We've got Tim Thomas. Hey now, Tim. Welcome. We've got Jeff K. Hello, Jeff. And we've got Charles Green. Hey, Charles. How you doing? We've got Fruitcake Tony as well. I saw Fruitcake Tony just now popping in.
So it's really nice to see you guys popping in. We've got somebody else as well. We had, yeah, I think. Okay, and my nephew Kia is in the chat as well. So hi, Kia.
Hey, Kia.
Hope you're good. Yeah. So that's really cool. So hopefully I've got everybody with this shout out. So good to see you all. Got 14 watching. So thanks all for joining. And yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat and shout out anybody who comes in as we go along.
Awesome.
Cool.
Do you guys want me to put the picks up and we can have a conversation around the picks? Is that a good time? Is that a good time for us to do that, Alan? Are you happy to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So obviously, you know, the album cover, in my opinion, guys, it's one of the classic. We know, obviously, Led Zeppelin 1, but there is just something about Led Zeppelin 2, the album cover for me, which is unique. There it is there, you know, the font. Alan, Simon, do you guys have some thoughts on the album cover?
Well, it's clearly it's a First World War photograph, isn't it? They kind of adapted the First World War photograph of a group of flyers.
That's the original there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and clearly sort of alluding to the you know the Led Zeppelin, the Zeppelin bit with the flyers. So yeah, it's cool. Yeah, very cool.
Alan, do you have an opinion on Led Zeppelin 2, the artwork, the cover? Do you rank that anywhere in your canon?
It's obviously, to use the overused word, it's iconic. I do happen to think that it was probably maybe a bit slapdash, maybe a bit of an afterthought. It wasn't something the band was heavily involved in, and they were just on the road. I mean, the whole album is about them being on the road and hurrying up and recording this album over so many different studios across the States and Canada and the UK. And, it is what it is. It's like, the album cover is cool because the music is so cool. I think that's my personal opinion.
Yeah. No argument. The only reason why we're talking about
carrying on with the theme from the first album with the Zeppelin, and flying and World War II. So that it carries on with that theme. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, Alan makes a good point there, guys. The only reason why we're talking about the album cover is because the music is cool. If the music was crap, we wouldn't be talking about the album cover, Alan. Makes perfect sense.
Yes.
So here's some pics here from that same era. I'm not sure if this is... I think this is when they were recording Led Zeppelin 2. I'm not 99% sure, Alan.
Yes, that's correct. That is from the Zeppelin 2 sessions. I'm not sure which studio that is. That could be Olympic, but it's a different session than the other ones that we have photos of from that are definitely Whole Lotta Love and What Is and What Should Never Be. These are some other sessions. These could indeed be overdubs for What Is and What Should Never Be, like the slide lead guitar, which came later.
Uh-huh. And there's a publicity shot of the guys with that Les Paul there, which is in the early stages of becoming iconic for Mr. Page, isn't it?
It's towards the end of 1969. At that point in that picture, Jimmy had put the Grover tuners on. When the album was recorded, he had the original Kluson tuners.
Correct.
And Jimmy didn't like those and felt like they were slipping. So he did what many, many, many people did at that point, which was to use Grover tuners instead. And there was an improvement in tuning. You can hear it through the bootlegs. By the time they got to Toronto in 1969, he was in perfect tune on things like Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. And the tuning was a little more suspect before that live from the earliest recordings in April of 1969 when he just got the guitar. And the sessions began in early May of 69 at Olympic. And again, the photos show that he had the original Kluson tuners on it at the time.
Awesome. So there's a moral there.
A lot of people did that.
If you're having tuning issues, change your tuners.
Although that's typically not the issue. Typically, the issue is that the nut was cut poorly, and the strings hadn't been stretched properly, But it's 99% of tuning problems in any guitar is because of the nut, and there are, it could be that it did help in some way, and the results kind of speak for themselves. By the time that particular picture that you're showing right there was taken, that's Copenhagen in February of 1970. He was well in command of the tuning, and he was getting a better grasp of the tones on the Les Paul at that point. Again, it was still early days in the studio with the Les Paul, and later on in the sessions, I don't know exactly, and I can't state for certain exactly which songs were recorded with the Marshalls versus the Vox UL 4120 and transonic speaker cabinets. I only know for sure that Jimmy has stated in no uncertain terms that the photos that we have, and that he knows for sure that he used that gear, the Vox and the transonic, on Whole Lot of Love and What Is and What Should Never Be. And he has stated on other occasions that things like Heartbreaker and possibly Killing Floor Lemon Song was the Marshall. But there's no 100% proof on that. So, but to the best of my understanding, the second album was probably half the Vox UL 4120, and the other maybe even 75% of the album was Marshall. So this was the first album that Jimmy used the Marshall amplifiers on. Correct.
And here's a pic here, guys, of
Clearly
obviously the
transitioning between the two.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he was transitioning, with the Telecaster to the Les Paul, and from the Vox and hodgepodge of amplifiers that he used, including the Arbiter Power 100 and Sound City 100-watt amp that he was using, kind of slapdash at that time. He moved away from that, got the Les Paul, and got to the Marshall, and that's when things started getting to make more sense.
Yeah. And on this pic here, you can see here with the Voxes, that they would have been, this is when he was using his Telecaster. So, he had a reputation, didn't he, Simon and Al, of playing loud for a long time. So these amps here wouldn't have been quiet amps.
They may have been fairly loud, but not as loud as you might think. And they were not, they didn't distort hardly at all.
Correct.
They were very clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the really interesting thing, isn't it, Alan? That there wasn't a huge amount of distortion. There was really not, and just a bit you got from the amp and the guitar, but not a huge amount of it. And when you listen to those records properly, there isn't, is there? There really isn't.
No.
And that kind of I always think it's a complete kind of non-thing. People talk about Led Zeppelin being the founders of heavy metal and stuff like that. It doesn't sound anything like that to me. I mean, really not. Not the first few albums either. Really, don't sound like that at all.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that tag gets put on it because of the concept of just repeating riffs, and then having a song over a repeated riff, typically involving like open strings and power chords. And so from that perspective, yes, and then also having a high-pitched lead singer and having it be a guitar-based drums and high-pitched lead singer format, you could say that was obviously a blueprint and a progenitor of heavy metal. But yeah, in terms of the actual guitar sound, no, it's relatively clean. I mean, it's actually even cleaner than, say, you would have heard on. It's cleaner than you would have heard on the Blues Breakers album, for instance.
Yeah, that's true. And
when you listen to a Whole Lot of Love and What Is and What Should Never Be, especially a Whole Lot of Love, the amplifier is very, very loud, the Vox UL 4120. But again, you can turn it up really, really loud and only get just a very, very little breakup. The only other component that he had in line was the Vox, which was the Vox Long Tom Echo. And there's a very minimal preamp in that Echo unit that got a little tiny bit more gain in the sound. So that's what you're hearing on Whole Lot of Love, which many people have struggled and kind of defined that as like one of the greatest guitar tones in history. But people tried all kinds of different amps, and no one really at that point knew what the amp head and speaker combination was, and didn't know about the long tom echo being in it. And the long tom echo is a very, very rare unit, so it wasn't like people were able to just grab one off the shelf of the pawn shop and try it. This gear was rare back then, and it's Steve doesn't even begin to cover it for those things now.
That makes sense then why he changed the speakers. That makes sense why he changed the speakers in that Rickenbacker unit then. So, makes perfect sense. Good point, Al.
Yeah. And it was something that I struggled with. I mean, I really wanted to know because, to me, Whole Lot of Love is just, it's just it. The sound is just unbelievable. The guitar sound and the bass sound and the whole track. And, but it was kind of like legendary. That people really sought that tone, and it's a very unusual combination. And Jimmy never repeated that combination again. To the best of my knowledge, he never used that gear again on any Led Zeppelin tour or album. So it's just
he did the Marshalls then, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
And high watts as well.
High watts. Yeah. Yes. I used to have a high watt 100 watt. It was blisteringly loud, but also interestingly blisteringly clean.
Yes.
I mean, I wasn't playing a Les Paul, I was playing a Strat through it, but and I did a few times crank it up, get it to 5 or 6 when it was incredible, but it still didn't break up. There still wasn't any real overdrive there, let alone distortion. There wasn't really any overdrive. It was still massively clean.
Yes.
Incredible.
And depending on the model, and because the high watts were custom made for artists back then, so the high watts that Pete Townsend was using were like the ones that you probably tried. They were clean. Jimmy's high watt was a custom, and that was actually quite a bit of distortion.
Did it? Yeah.
And that's what you hear on Royal Albert Hall in 1970 by that point.
Yes. Yeah. On the DVD. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing sound, and also that we should put in a comment about when he recorded that thing about recording the room, that putting the microphone away from the speaker so you're not right on the speaker, so you're getting an ambient sound as well as the speaker sound. I think
that's certainly true. Although sometimes people misinterpret that to mean that he used only one microphone just out in the room. In fact, it was a combination.
He did a combination, didn't he? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so people do often make that mistake, and they'll think, "Oh, he just recorded, with the mic like 40 feet away." Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
No. He much. I mean, that I'm just reading the Brad Telinsky book about and he describes in there been doing exactly that and learning how to do that in all the sessions and things, and learning how to, so a combination of mics, one close and one not so close to. Was really interesting in terms of getting a sound that big sound, and also that thing about using a small amp with a guitar to but miking it in a way so you've got a big sound out of it, which is for me that makes Jimmy Page such a great because of that production, those ideas, and that the stuff that he learned, the stuff that he applied to Led Zeppelin that make even today that makes them sound so good.
Keith Campbell, you're right, mate. Probably the article that you need to read, if anyone hasn't, is the article that came out in July 1977. It was an interview that Steve Rosen did with Jimmy Page. It is essential reading. It's called "My Vocation is More in Composition Than Anything Else, Orchestrating the Guitar Like an Army." So go. It's on the internet, guys. Go and check it out. Steve Rosen, 1977. It's the amount of detail that's included in that article is fantastic for guitar nuts like us. Guitar Man 45, thank you for joining us. But I think you're right.
Johnny
it's really
Heartbreaker.
Interesting, guys, that we need to understand that that transition from Led Zeppelin 1, Alan, to Led Zeppelin 2, as far as the gear. It's it's amazing. It's a revelation, and we've spoken about this a few times on the show. A lot of us didn't know that there was a Telecaster, and I hate repeating this, but on Led Zeppelin 1. But then when you go and listen to Led Zeppelin 2, when you're aware of that, the tonal variations between the two albums, for my ears, when you know that, is amazing.
Yes, and I will have to say that there is a misunderstanding that I don't know how it got put in the ethers, but there's no, to the best of my knowledge and going by my ears and the interviews and the photographic evidence, there's no Telecaster whatsoever on the second album. There are some people that claimed, people thought that the lead guitar on Whole Lotta Love was the Telecaster. It is not. It's just the Les Paul with the wah-wah engaged all the way to the treble position.
I'm glad you're answering that, because that was going to be my question for you guys. Is there a Telecaster snuck into that album? Hey Keith, so there's not. Thank you, Al. Simon, do you agree?
Well, I agree. I think one of the interesting things is that, and I've heard this a few times, is that people say there is quite a similarity of sound between a Telecaster and those late 50s, 58, 59, 60 Les Pauls. That actually the sound between the two of them is not that dissimilar. I've heard quite a few people say that about them who've played them. I've never played one, so I don't know. But so I think that maybe people are mistaking it, because actually you can get that Telecaster sound out of the Les Paul.
I will say that is true to an extent. I think one of the big culprits, though, the main thing that made the Telecaster on the first album sound so good and so close to a Les Paul in terms of its mid-range and it's just the beefy sound of it, is the amplifier. So on the first album, Jimmy was using that modified Supro amplifier that has now been put into production by the great Mitch Colby and the Sundragon amplifiers between Mitch Colby and Jimmy. That is key. You can work with the Telecaster and work with EQ, and you can try to get it to sound like a Les Paul. But the thing that puts it over the top is that amplifier. That's a specific amplifier that works very specifically with the Telecaster to get that truly, truly close to a Les Paul sound. Now, yes, with a Les Paul, you can dial a Les Paul back and make a Les Paul sound more single coil like, or closer to a P90, or closer to a Strat or a Telecaster sound. But the Telecaster, it only goes so far to a certain point. But that amplifier was what was special, and that's what made everything sound so great and heavy, and with the beefy mid range and not the cutting ice pick treble that you would typically get with a Stratocaster or a Telecaster. So that must be said, that's the main component. And so then I think a lot of people would then transfer that and think, oh, he was able, any Telecaster can sound like a Les Paul. And I would say, no, any Telecaster with that particular amplifier can sound close, very close to a Les Paul.
Okay, I've got another question for you, Al. Sorry to interrupt, but it's related to exactly what we're talking about, and I want to chuck this out to anybody else in the chat. Have you played any of these new Supro amps that have been released? That are in any of the guitar stalls, or have you owned them? Has that helped get the tone? Because we're all tone chasers. Have you got an experience that you want to share with us, please?
Shall I jump on that one? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I haven't had the experience of it, so it's all yours.
Yeah, I'll say yes. And none of the amps that are Supro branded have anything to do with the actual Jimmy Page modified Supro amplifier and the tone that everyone's been chasing. Okay. Their brand was their rebranding, and their new amplifiers are all successes based on people chasing the Jimmy Page tone from the first album. Right. But those amplifiers are nothing like the actual one. It was Mitch Colby and, his genius, with kind of reverse engineering from the actual amplifier that Jimmy gave him to work from. That was also kind of Perry Margolif, Jimmy's good friend, who kind of made the project come together with Mitch Colby. But it was Mitch having access to the original amplifier and his brilliance with every kind of amplifier from every era that made the Sundragon amplifier possible. So the truth is that no, none of the Supro branded things that are new and none of the Supro branded things that were old and vintage could come close to the actual Page tone from the first album, because it's a completely different beast. It's not to say that it's a complicated, crazy mod. And as Mitch explains it, that amplifier just had a few different little tweaks, and it had it went from being I believe it was a 2x10 amp, and then it became a single 12-inch speaker, and it just was the way that those components happened to just fall together. It was the person that modded that amp. It was just a repair job, and that repair job happened to go randomly really, really well.
Wow.
But it was Mitch that recreated that. So, for anybody out there that actually is interested in learning and wants to really know what the tone of a Telecaster, that you could get close to that first album tone, you have to go straight to Sundragon amplifiers and buy one of them. Even the street level model is very, very expensive, and but it's worth every penny. It's incredible. I've played through it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's the one, and Mitch hit it out of the park. Mitch Colby, I will say right now, is a genius. The man is a genius. Foremost expert in amplifiers in the world, and I'm glad that Jimmy and Perry Margolif got with Mitch and made this happen, and it's really incredible thing. So all that's to say, yeah. So that was the first album, and then that was then not used on the second album, to the best of my knowledge. There is a small Supro amplifier that's present that I believe may have been used to amplify the theremin. Yep, looks just like that. There's the Sundragon amplifier.
Yeah.
I'll get a pic of it and put it on the screen. Hold on, guys.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys, they're not that good, but gives you some idea. That's the back of it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can see.
There's a lot going on in the second album like that. There's this transition that we're talking about that's leaving the Telecaster behind. He's starting fresh with the Les Paul, completely new album sound, and then again migrating to the Marshalls, on the road in different studios, and he's tweaking it as he's going along and getting closer and closer, and but as he did always, he was a master of recording and a master of guitar tones, and but it's a progression. He didn't often find one thing that worked and then stuck with it, other than Marshalls, because his sound changed drastically throughout the years, as we know, in a live context, especially.
Yeah, and also Mitch seems to be involved with park amps as well. I didn't know that either.
I don't believe that Jimmy has ever used a Park amp.
No, sorry, Mitch rather than Jimmy.
Mitch has the Park amps brand.
Doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Park was an old brand, kind of offshoot of Marshall, but it's Mitch now has that brand, and has done amazing, excellent amps under the Park label.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I've got the website up there of the
one.
Sundragon amps. So as a result of the collaboration between Jimmy Page, Perry Margolif, and Mitch Colby that Allen's was just making reference to, guys. So, yeah.
And so that amplifier is actually what you hear, and this is kind of going away from Led Zeppelin 2, but that amplifier is what you hear on the Yardbirds Little Games album, and it's also what you hear on the Joe Cocker With a Little Help from My Friends sessions.
Yes,
including with a little help from my friends. Yep, it's in there, and so it's on that track. It's and Jimmy says he's playing the Telecaster on that album, and so that was there's a song called Margarine that has a great solo. Bye Bye Blackbird, I think, is another one that Jimmy has a great solo on, and then and of course the title track, which is iconic, and many people thought that was a Les Paul, but in fact it was the Telecaster through the original Supro amplifier, modified Supro amplifier.
So you've played one of these,
yes,
Alan. You've had wow. See, these amps aren't in New Zealand at all.
They're not in the United States at all either. You got because they get bought. The ones that are out in the wild are purchased, and then if you want one, you can put yourself on a waiting list. And the standard edition is available. The limited edition ones, of course, sold out in seconds. I think they made like 50 of them or something like that. And
50.
People like
$12,000.
Right. And Kirk Hammett bought one. The usual suspects that have a lot of money bought them right as soon as they came out.
Of course.
Oh yeah. But the standard version is it's doable. I mean, it's something. The amount of money that people spend on amps and pedals and stuff like that. Throw all your pedals away. Throw everything away. Just get that good amplifier and the guitar, and you're doing yourself a favor.
So when you played that amp, did you use a Telecaster and
I did.
Gibson Les Paul as well?
I did not. I did not even want to use a Les Paul, and I didn't have a Les Paul at the time. But I did not. I didn't even want to use it. I mean, I specifically wanted to use the Telecaster. That's the point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's the thing. There were a lot of people trying to demo that with using a Les Paul, or when people would do demos online, they would play songs that were not recorded with the Super amplifier. They were playing material from Led Zeppelin 2.
Oh.
On a Les Paul through that old amp. So that would just drive me insane. So you would try to get an idea of what it sounded like, but people just didn't know. So they would just think, oh, I'm going to play Heartbreaker with a Les Paul through this thing. And they would sit there and go, doesn't it sound like the album? I'm like, no, it does not.
No,
not
it
anywhere
doesn't.
close.
No.
Yeah. But if you were to take a Telecaster and play, say, How Many More Times or Communication Breakdown or Dazed and Confused, then yes. And again, if you were to play the the rhythm parts that don't have the tone bender on it, for the heavy fuzz like you hear on Dazed and Confused and You Shook Me and that kind of thing, you have to listen for the parts that are just the guitar to the amplifier. And so things like I Can't Quit You Baby and Communication Breakdown, the solo to Communication Breakdown, and that's a carryover to Led Zeppelin 2, because to get back to that album. So the solos on Communication Breakdown were done with the gray prototype early Vox wah-wah all the way in the high treble position. Right. And that's the same thing that happens in Whole Lotta Love solo. In fact, at the very, very beginning of the Whole Lotta Love solo, the first notes, you can hear him rock the pedal forward just once, and he leaves it in the treble position. Wow. It's as if when and you can listen to the bootlegs of the tracks, you can hear him kick on the wah, and you can hear the noise, and then you can hear him start playing, and you can hear him just push his toe into the treble position. And I believe part of the reason for that was if he would have put the treble position all the way down and left it like that, it would have just squealed with feedback with him not playing anything. So you hear him go whoosh, and he puts it in the treble position, and then he starts playing the solo as we know it,
So, ladies and gentlemen, your appreciation of these songs that Alan is making reference to will never be the same again. And, Taylor 315 is making a very, very good comment. He's summing it up. This is a really fantastic show today. And obviously, we have to put that down to Alan and his analysis and in-depth research and study on the subject, because it's blowing me away too, Alan. I'm just, I'm going, oh gosh, we're all fanboys, aren't we? And to have Alan come on here and share years of his research and experience is just fascinating. I think it's mind blowing. So I've got a question then for you guys and everyone in the chat. So, Alan, clearly we've got an appreciation and a love for Led Zeppelin 1 because it was a unique album, Led Zeppelin, when it came out. Without putting you guys in the hot seat too much, can you see a progression in the tonality that's progressively better for you with Led Zeppelin 2? Is it a milestone jump? Is it a huge leap forward, or is it just a tentative step in your appreciation? I'm going to throw it to Alan first, and then I'm going to ask the Rock Professor to offer his opinion.
I can say yes. The thing about the first album is that it was all recorded in the same studio and in one go. And Led Zeppelin 2 was not. It was recorded in several studios over several months on the road. So it's remarkable that they were able to make this album sound so good and so cohesive by recording it in bits and pieces. You know, like Heartbreaker, the whole main track of Heartbreaker was recorded at one time, and then the whole middle section guitar solo was recorded at months later.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was and which led to an interesting thing. The guitar that when Jimmy recorded the Heartbreaker solo, the unaccompanied solo in the middle is tuned a little, maybe a quarter of a step or more higher than the guitar in the rest of the song, because it was recorded at a different time and he didn't check the tuning between the two. And so that used to drive me crazy. I didn't know that when I was a kid learning how to play it. I'd keep thinking, well, why is it so high? And I can't bend my string behind the nut high enough to reach the pitch. And it was because it was recorded at a different time and it was tuned differently. So I didn't, it took me forever to figure that out,
Wow.
And it was the same thing with Moby Dick. Actually, Moby Dick was recorded, the instrumental parts were recorded by themselves. And then Bonzo's drum solo was recorded at a completely different time.
Yeah.
So
it's well, it just what interests me about that is that unlike you, Alan, I've never noticed that until recently. There was one, I can't remember which song it is. There's one song that's got slide on it. This little bit, it's like they're just when you listen, good God, that's out of tune. I mean, it's like way off, and yet I never noticed it before, and I can't understand why I did. I'm old, clop-eared, but it's So I find these things endlessly fascinating. That thing about you were saying earlier about the wah-wah, you put the wah, instead of going wah wah wah, you put the wah in a particular position to get a particular tone out of it. That's because that's all you had. So I find that really interesting. For me, Andrew, that it's not. It's a kind of. I think it's a different sound. I mean, I love the sound of Led Zeppelin 1. I think it's great, and he does a fantastic. It's a tribute to his production skills and his ability to get things done quickly, efficiently, good enough to make it sonically really good to listen to. At the second one, equally, different. Clearly, he's progressing in terms of his, what guitar he's using, what amps he's using, and stuff. And I like any decent musician, as you go along, you learn, don't you? And clearly, what's Jimmy Page, 24 or something? Is it? And yet all that experience is going into what he's doing, and I think he's kind of broadening out a bit, but I still think it sounds really good, And so I think it's, for me, it's just every album is a progression for Page, the overdubbing and the way he does things, and is a progression each time, but. You go back to Led Zeppelin 1, it's got a raw energy and a drive and a sound that is uniquely it. And I think it's still a great sound.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I particularly have a fondness for Led Zeppelin 1 and Led Zeppelin 2. I love the backstory behind the albums and behind the band. Alan already mentioned that, they were recording Led Zeppelin 2 on the run, when they were on tour, and it was, released virtually immediately after Led Zeppelin 1. So we're getting a document, an audio document of a band working as it's beginning its giant climbs into rock and roll history. It's just fascinating. So if you go, I see them as Volume 1 and Volume 2, Led Zeppelin 1, Led Zeppelin 2. I can hear the difference, but I didn't when I was young. Because I was listening to something different when you're drinking beer with your mates, and and then you just get a little bit older, and then you get the facts, Alan. And I think this is one of the reasons why Simon and I appreciate getting you onto the show and a lot of other shows that we do, because it gives you an appreciation, even if you've been listening to this stuff for 30 or 40 years. Of how and what's going on. So when I realized Led Zeppelin 2 was with Les Paul, because I've got this image in my mind of the Les Paul, Simon, it just, and I'm a fanboy. I'm a fanboy of Les Paul. So it just put me into a different place where I could go, Alan, I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a leap forward to me in fidelity between the first album and the second album. I think you know, there's a difference in the engineers. It was Glenn Johns that had engineered the first album, and then it was Eddie Kramer who engineered the second album, and you know, worked with Jimmy, particularly on the, as Jimmy often cites, the middle section of Whole Lotta Love was him and Eddie Kramer kind of running around and, you know, twiddling knobs and doing things, panning things, and, you know, having fun with that. And there's a difference in the Les Paul. So with the Telecaster, you had the neck pickup and you had the bridge pickup, and there's not anything really in between. You know, there's three positions, but it doesn't really, you know, the way the original Telecasters the circuits were done, it's really just the neck pickup and the bridge pickup. But with the Les Paul, you've got the fully functioning three different pickup positions, and Page from day one was taking full advantage of all three of those positions. So the bridge, the combination of the bridge and the neck, and then the neck pickup. And you hear that throughout the album. So that right there is a massive difference in sound. You know, it was primarily just the bridge pickup on the first album, with the exception of I Can't Quit You Baby on the first album. He uses the neck pickup a lot and switches to the bridge pickup at certain points. But a lot of that was just the neck pickup of the Telecaster. But so I mean, things like a lot of things that you think that one of the great things that Jimmy did was he used the Les Paul to its full advantage. Clapton was essentially riding a lot of the bridge pickup. He did the neck pickup and some of the combinations a little bit, but Jimmy really took full advantage of it, to my estimation.
Correct.
Yeah.
People think that the heavy metal thing is like it's the bridge humbucker. They think that's what it is. It's not. He's actually using all three positions and just kind of using them wisely. You really hear that very, very well on the Lemon song. So you can hear him get that in between rockabilly position. And you hear him use the neck pickup, and you hear him use the bridge pickup, and you know, you kind of hear that transition through there. That you know, same thing. And Keith points out, "What is and what should never be" is another example of that. Absolutely.
It's really interesting, that, isn't it? You know, what he got, you know, and you not only that going between bits, but also winding the tone off, you know, and all of those things to clean it up, to change it and stuff, you know, and you know, we did several shows on The Song Remains the Same, you know, where you're watching him do it live and you're going, really? You know, they all are kind of turning it down, turning it up. It's like, blimey, you know, it's going to, you know, because, you know, without any effects, you know, without any, you know, huge pedal board, you know, what have you got? Two hands and two knobs. Well, four knobs, you better go on, you know, and you see is what you can do with those things as combinations. I find still mesmerizing today, really, as a, you know, as a way of doing it. And, you know, those long and involved, you know, live solos that, you know, you said are kind of worked out. And when you said that, after I went back and listened, and you could hear all the different sections, you know, section here, and then another section, you know, but the sound is different, you know, they fiddle, as you say, fiddling with the volume, switching the pickup, you know, taking the tone down. It's just, I find it amazing, really, that, you know, still, I don't mind if he worked them out. It still sounds brilliant to me, and I still am in awe of working out half an hour's worth of, you know, doing those things. Just incredible.
Oh yes, and of course, like in The Song Remains the Same, and you know, so many of the live things. But yes, he's working all of those angles on the guitar itself. And then he's adding the wah-wah, and very occasionally used the Phase 90 starting in 73. And so, you know, but it's like very minimal, you know, it's, you know, he went from having the wah-wah and the tone bender and Vox Long Tom Echo, later the Benson Echo Rec, and later the Echoplex. And so that was it. But that's really kind of basic, you know, when you think about modern pedal boards and what people are doing these days with, like, I mean, 20, 30 effects is not uncommon on some of these boards. And, you know, here's Page, you know, really schooling everyone on what you can do with just the guitar and, you know, like an echo and a wah-wah, essentially. And that's it. You know?
Yes. Astonishing that so much with so little in that sense, you know.
Oh, yeah. And so and this is also a transition period away from him using the tone bender. So he was using the tone bender on the Telecaster and on the Les Paul when they were playing live in the bootlegs from April and May of 1969, when the sessions for the second album started. Jimmy was still using the tone bender, the Mark II tone bender live.
Can you describe for people what the tone bender does to the best of your ability, please, if people aren't familiar with that effect for us?
Sure. Well, the tone bender was just Page's fuzz unit of choice, and the way he used it was not super subtle in most cases. It was like you hear it on Live Yardbirds featuring Jimmy Page. It's a clean guitar sound, a relatively clean, very slightly overdriven guitar sound, but really kind of a almost anemic sound with the Telecaster and the amps that he was using in the Yardbirds live at that time. Almost sounds like a real clean, like a Fender twin reverb or something, like almost like a country sound. And then he would kick on the tone bender, and then you're into the full Dazed and Confused, over, under, sideways, down, You Shook Me, that kind of thing. And the, the overdubs on Dazed and Confused, the fuzz guitar overdubs on Dazed and Confused. But you really hear it in the, he starts using it on the Les Paul again. And he didn't change the gear that he was, went from using the Telecaster to Les Paul, and so there was this kind of period where he was just, doing the same thing that he always did, but just using a different guitar. And slowly he started whittling those things away. So eventually he just got rid of the tone bender and wasn't really using it. It was just the amp distortion, and that's it. And he pretty well stayed with that for many, many, many years. So still another transition period, no more tone bender there's no tone bender on the second album to the best of my knowledge. I don't hear that there at all on any of the tracks.
Yeah. Well, I can't hear it, and I did a quick search too, Al, and I couldn't find it either. So, again, that's one of the reasons why we have an appreciation for Led Zeppelin 2. Not discounting what Led Zeppelin 1 gave us sonically and tonally, but exactly what Alan just said. It's the reduction of effects, more and Page talks about it himself too, doesn't he? About the instrument going through directly to the amplifier. So he's sort of working that out to as a human being, as a musician. He that spiritual kind of side of him where he's seeing what the guitar is and having that less interference, if you like. So a lot of these guys are talking about that stuff, Simon. Peter Green was talking about it as well, around that. I just want to be pure. I just want to have the guitar and the amp and make that work. And if I can't make that work, Alan and Simon, well, why am I playing a guitar? Yeah, makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And they're really, and again, happenstance, there weren't that many effects available at that point. There just weren't. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't go out.
Not like today.
Yeah, it's like you had your wah-wah pedal and you had your fuzz, and that was about it. And maybe an echo unit of some sort, and that was it. But part of it was by design, part of it was just accident.
Classic case of less is more, isn't it?
Yeah.
And your constraint, and we've discussed this a lot on here about how the constraints of those times actually make an increase in creativity because you have to get around them. If you're only recording on an 8-track tape recorder, you have to work out a way, if you want to do overdubs and things like that, of being able to do it, don't you?
Yeah.
If you've got a 48-track digital thing, you can put as many 15 guitar tracks, and you can do the old Def Leppard thing. Every note of the chord I'm going to record on a separate track and all of that.
Oh yeah.
I don't think those things that doesn't improve it for me. It's the fact that Page had 4 8-track recorders to record, and those constraints actually made those things really creative, and you had to make the most of what you had. And that's
and as he said many times from his days as a studio musician, he's also, they're on the road and they're recording on the off hours, and they don't have the time to do a Fleetwood Mac or a Pink Floyd or whatever, and stay, or the Beatles, and stay in the studio and do whatever he wants to do. So yeah, it was a case of, I've got to hurry up and take 2 or 3 more takes. Just do 2 or 3, and that's what Jimmy always says, that he does 2 or 3 takes and just chooses the one. And the bootlegs of the sessions for this bear that out. There are about, I think, 2 takes of the live unaccompanied guitar solo in the middle of Heartbreaker, right?
Yeah.
One of them is good, lots of flubs. And then the other one is the one that we hear on the record. And the engineer was asking, "You want to do another one, Jimmy?" And he's like, "No, I've lost it." And they went on and they just selected that one. So, when people talk about that being sloppy and what have you, it's like, well, yeah, they had 2 takes and they had to get out the door.
There's a question there for you guys, if you want to answer that, please. Sorry to interrupt, Alan and
sure.
Simon.
No.
But Holly's asking, did Plant use his own effects on stage for his voice?
He did he has. It was a short period. I believe there was, and like if you listen to, good example of the earlier use of echo on Robert's voice was the Live on Blueberry Hill album. You'll hear that I believe he was using Echoplex or Benson Echo Rec on his voice there, and he may have triggered it with a foot switch. But later on, he got a guy named Benji LaFave, who was his vocal technician. So he would handle the echo off stage. And that was from, I believe Benji joined them in about 72, I want to say. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you'll see him in the credits of The Song Remains the Same. And Benji stayed working with Plant through his solo years, through the Honey Drippers. So I think Benji was with him through up until the Now and Zen album.
Wow.
Right. But definitely echo and not reverb, we should say.
No reverb, just echo. Yeah.
No, just echo. Yeah. Well, I suppose you get a natural reverb from the halls if we're playing big places.
Right.
But, yes, because it's a classic thing to put reverb on the voice, isn't it? To kind of that sort of thing. But to specifically use that kind of, well, I guess is that kind of 50s rock and roll kind of echo, isn't it?
Yeah, that's definitely where part of it comes from. That short slapback echo is something that Page used and Plant used it. Although the thing with Plant was, and what made him amazing, where he was on equal footing with the 3 musicians in the band, as many have pointed out, Plant's voice is a musical instrument, and Plant played that instrument with just as much creativity and fire as if he was playing a guitar. And the way he used his voice and the decisions made to use echo on his voice, just as you would have with a guitar, so he not only was he in that Janis Joplin, Steve Marriott mold, of high pitch and great grit and just power, but he then took it to that other level of using you can't even think of Robert Plant's voice without echo in a lot of ways, and that came into flower on the second album. You're hearing that in Whole Lot of Love, obviously, right away. So yeah, echo is a big deal for Plant's voice, but just an interesting thing to think about it that way. It was a band of equals. It wasn't like 3 musicians and the singer. That's like David Lee Roth. David Lee Roth would be the singer, and then there's the band, but really Robert Plant was just as much a musician as the other 3 in a lot of ways, because the way he used his voice and the way they produced it.
Good point. See, again, Alan, thank you very much. So you guys need to go back and listen to your Led Zeppelin records and understand now intellectually that you've been given this idea now that Plant's voice has been managed, produced, given to us as an instrument like the other members of the band, not just a front man, which is no discredit to front men or women of bands, but very, very insightful comment, Alan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Well, that's people often say that. I'm just kind of regurgitating what other people said, but it's a fact that really is a deal, and I think Robert's aware of that. And part of it was like Simon says, it's just Robert is there in the middle of these 3 incredible musicians, and I know that in the early days he was a scared young kid and probably sitting there thinking man, what am I going to do in front of these people? And how do I fit myself in with what is going on here? And, I think that that became his sort of guiding light was to kind of stand toe to toe with them as an instrument, use that echo, do that stuff where he's doubling Jimmy's guitar, like in Dazed and Confused. You know, that type of thing. That's putting him on a whole other level. He's not just singing; he's doing noises. You know, so this is the thing that people know of Plant. You know, all the moaning and the you know the
moaning and groaning, baby. Yes,
the moaning and groaning and the you know all that kind of stuff. You know, all of those little things that he does. That's a voice being used as a musical instrument. It's not a method of delivering lyrics or melody. You know,
wonderful insight, Alan.
It becomes a dynamic thing, doesn't it? About dynamics and about sound and about texture, as much as it is about, as you say, lyrics and delivering a melody kind of thing, which is really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, I have just a few more minutes, but before I jump off, I did want to say something about the the acoustic tracks on the album, which are 2, and with a third that was a non-album track that we didn't see until the Super Deluxe reissues, which was called La La. But as that guitar right there is the EROS Dakota 606. Acoustic 6-string, and that was used to record the track La La and Ramble On and Thank You. So that was one of 3 guitars on Thank You, actually. So that was and that particular picture right there, people have often said that was him recording Ramble On or something. It's not. It's actually him recording La La. So says the booklet in the Super Deluxe edition. They've pinned that session down to that. And also in that picture, you will see in that picture right there, you will see the Marshall head on the other side. That's not Jimmy's Marshall. That is John Paul Jones playing his bass through that Marshall. So another thing about the album is a lot of the heaviness and the dirt and the distortion is actually coming from the bass guitar on a couple of those tracks, like Heartbreaker and Whole Lotta Love. That has a very heavy, distorted sound, and I believe that was Jones's bass through that Marshall head and that cabinet. So though, like we were talking about, Whole Lotta Love has got basically a clean sound on the guitar. It's John Paul Jones's bass that's bringing the distortion and the heaviness.
Yeah. It's a favorite with bass players, that, isn't it, to play through Marshalls and stuff to give it Dusty Hill, for instance, from ZZ Top, plays his bass through a Marshall.
Yes.
Great growly sound. Absolutely, yeah.
And to the best of my knowledge, I think it was Jonesy that actually really. There may have been, obviously John Entwistle was doing things. He was playing through the Marshalls well before the Led Zeppelin got them. But that's there's another situation. This was how British bands were playing at that point, because, Pete Townshend's rhythm sound generally was, he was playing through the high watt amps even back then and the Marshalls. And, say, for instance, if you listen to, Woodstock or Live at Leeds, or you listen to the earlier recordings of The Who, all the distortion is coming from John Entwistle. The heaviness, the bottom, the thing that gives it that borderline heavy metal thing is all coming from Entwistle. It's not really coming from Townsend. He has relatively clean guitar sounds, and especially Pete, who plays not just power chords. Pete has so many, just regular major chords and all these triads and inversions that you can only hear with a slightly clean amplifier. So that was kind of a tradition, though. Again, John Paul Jones, he's bringing the dirt, but that was the same with kind of the same with Jack Bruce and Eric, and the same with again Pete and John Entwistle. So there's a commonality in there, But again, the mindset, I think in hindsight, is formed by the latter day heavy metal, because you're thinking of guitar tones and you're thinking hard rock, you're thinking heavy metal. It's got to be a distorted guitar sound, but really it's kind of an overdriven guitar sound with a heavy, overdriven, spanking bass sound that makes the real power.
So you've got sort of that much, and half of it, the lower half is the bass and the upper half is the guitar. and it's what they do together to fill up the whole of that kind of harmonic spectrum, not what only one is doing. Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah, really interesting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
and then Jonesy kind of went away from that in a way, though, because, you know, kind of after the second album, he basically almost from that point on relied on a very clean sound. You know, he didn't, you know, that was just kind of a thing that he did on the second album, and then not on the third, not on the fourth, not on, you know, he didn't ever really repeat that super distorted fuzz bass. You know, well, he never did really fuzz bass very much, but he did it live once or twice. But he set the standard for keeping that James Jamerson clean but powerful fingerstyle Fender bass sound. Then that became the thing that, you know, hard rock and heavy metal people aspired to after that. Pete Townsend has made that observation that it was John Paul Jones that brought that into the milieu, and that's what everybody followed. You know, they weren't following John Entwistle, mostly because it's impossible to follow him. Who can play like that? I mean, he was one of a kind. You know, there's nobody that can. His fingers are. I mean, I don't care what anybody. I'm the one that often says you can always learn anything, and it's possible to play like anybody. Man, Entwistle's very, very difficult to be able to figure out what he's doing and play that way. That guy came from another planet, you know. But you know,
well,
yeah. So that's
they used to say, didn't they, that he played bass guitar? You know, he played it like, you know, it's like, you know, yeah, I played lead lines. It just happens to be on a bass guitar. It's like, you know, it's not in the same way as anybody else did, you know, because the Who were all ran the wrong way, weren't they? Like Pete Townsend was the rhythm section, and
that's a good point. If you go and watch his documentary, something Ox, I think, go and watch that, and he talks about the evolution of his sound, how he is playing it like a lead instrument right from the word go. And people used to go up to him, guys, and say, "What? You don't play the bass like that?" And he just turn around and say, you know, in a nice English working class way, go away.
Surely not.
Right. And of course, and then it must be said that these are lessons that Page would have learned by being on the Shel Talmy sessions for the Who and the Kinks. And, you know, he saw how these things, you know, he didn't all grasp it from nowhere. It was his studio experience that, you know, that led him to create what he created, you know. So there's definitely antecedents. Like I said, the whole thing about the Les Paul and the Marshall wasn't necessarily Jimmy even. Yes, he was aware of the Blues Breakers album, but it was Jimmy that recorded Telephone Blues and I'm Your Witch Doctor, which are arguably more distorted and have more feedback than anything on the Blues Breakers album. I mean,
they do.
Prefer
they do.
That particular, like, I'm Your Witch Doctor to me has a better Les Paul Marshall sound than anything on the Blues Breakers album. Call me crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And when Alan comes back on for another show, we'll do a bit of a deep dive on those tracks that Alan's talking about, because we've mentioned them when we've ranked the Beano album here on this channel, Alan. But I think we need to do a bit of a deep dive on that and just relate that and link that back into the Beano album that Alan mentioned at the beginning of the show, which, again, is an important thread for us to link into. And then, obviously, as a jumping point off later on for Led Zeppelin, because that imprint would have clearly have been in Page's mind. And there's a theory, guys, too, that, you know, that Page kept that for him for a project that he was going to do later on. So, you know, he could compartmentalize what he was doing very early on. So if there is some truth in that, you know, the guy's a genius, you know, because he said, yeah, that tone, great, I'll lock it here and I'll keep that, and we can work with something like this later on. Just a pure genius. I just think the guy's, wow.
Well, and here, let's jump back to, and the road I was going down was the acoustic tracks. And this is an example of his genius, and about the one track that, you know, it was Thank You. So Thank You was Robert's first complete and total independent lyric that he wrote for Led Zeppelin, was Thank You. Written for his wife, as has been said many times, Maureen. And the interesting thing on that track is it has some cool overdubs. So he's playing the Vox Phantom 12-string, electric 12-string that he had from the Yardbirds. same guitar that he used to record Traveling Riverside Blues on the BBC sessions earlier. Then he did overdubs with that Eros Dakota 606 acoustic guitar. So, and then he played the acoustic guitar solo using that guitar. And then also there is, I believe, the Vox Long Tom Echo is used on that as well. So, wonderful song with those really delicate sounds coming from the electric 12 string and then the acoustic guitar. And then I would say for anyone who wants to know about Ramble On, go watch Rick Beato's video where he dissects Ramble On. And Rick was really driven to go find that specific acoustic guitar sound because, Jimmy didn't use the same guitar that he had available on the first album. So the first album, he used the Mickey Most's J200, which was the same guitar that Jeff Beck used to record Greensleeves on Truth. And then, but the producer didn't want to let Jimmy borrow that guitar for the second album sessions. And I can understand why, because again, Jimmy was on the road in America, and that was still the J200 that he had was still a valuable guitar, and it was kind of irreplaceable. And it's it's an incredible recording guitar. So I understand why most didn't want to just let him go gallivanting around America with that guitar. So he had to get something else. So I believe probably while in England he picked up that Eros Dakota 606. It's made in Italy. And very, very similar to the Vox. So there's a Vox that's almost identical to it. And Rick Beato got a Vox version of that guitar, or very similar version of that guitar from Reverb. And he used that to do his breakdown video about Ramble On. So, go look, go to YouTube and search Rick Beato Ramble On, and you will hear and see the best breakdown of that entire tune, than I could possibly do. And yet there's that Vox Phantom 12-string, electric 12-string. Jimmy used that on some tracks in the Yardbirds. Tinker Tailor Soldier Sailor was one of the tracks, and another song called Glimpses from Little Games. And then again, that's the guitar that made its way to Traveling Riverside Blues. And then that same guitar was also used on Living Loving Maid. So there's the primary guitar on Living Loving Maid is the electric 12 string. And then the Les Paul was used to do the lead guitar overdubs on that, and also mixed in with the 12 string.
Uh-huh.
So you've got the 6-string electric Les Paul and the 12 string as the main basic guitars going on through that entire track. And then the lead is done on the Les Paul.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah. See, still that kind of that production of mixing the 6-string and the 12-string together and then using the things. If anybody wants to see, there's not a very good picture of the 12-string. Hopefully that sort of thing is what Jimmy Page.
Yeah, that's the. I'm not sure if that's the Eros. That may be the Eros. Yeah, that's the one. And I had sent Andrew a couple of more pictures.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I had sent Andrew a couple more pictures of Ann Eros, kind of that you can see a little bit more high definition in color version of it. But the interesting thing about that guitar, as Rick Beato points out, is that it was it wasn't a set neck one piece guitar. It was a bolt on neck, and so the way that the bridge was and the bolt on neck, the feel of it was almost like a little bit more like an electric guitar. It was somewhere between an electric guitar and an acoustic guitar, and it gave it a different sound. So it's not the same, beautiful high fidelity sound that the J200 has on the first album. It's a little bit more jangly sound that you hear on Led Zeppelin 2. And so that's another example of it was happenstance. If Jimmy had his druthers, he would have used the J200 on the second album. I mean, he said so. So yeah, and there's a picture of the front and back of the Eros 6-string. And people have made it some. It's been a little confusing for some people because they insist, it's the Vox or it's the Echo, which are other brand names of very, very similar guitars, also made in Italy. But it's the Eros, and there are some pictures that of Page with the guitar where you can clearly see the Eros brand. There you go, right there inside Andrew's hands.
So this This is a an Ico 12-string made in Italy, which has got the similar construction methods that Al is talking about with the bolt-on neck, and yeah, all around that same era.
Yeah,
and Rock
and
Professor's got one too.
Exactly. And they
The
were
Battle of
pretty
the 12 strings.
those guitars were pretty ubiquitous in the UK. A lot of people had those Vox, Echo, and the Eros guitars. You know, I think they may have actually been made in Italy for import to the UK.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. The Rangers, especially, and they did a couple of models. Obviously, like a good marketing company, they had entry level and they had mid range. I don't think they were manufactured. Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, for the top end of the market, but certainly middle, and entry level.
I can tell you the Echo Ranger 12 was about £60 new in 76, 76. I got one for my 18th birthday, which is why I know.
Is that expensive or?
It wasn't very expensive then.
Okay.
£60.
Okay.
Even then was, I mean, I read a review of it as a in Beat Instrumental and saying this is a really good guitar, and it was as good as things that were twice as expensive, into the hundreds of pounds. So I went and tried one, and yeah. So they always had a good reputation for sound, and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a lovely guitar.
But like a lot of things that are old from the 70s, and if like a lot of
three
good
of us,
things,
yes.
They accumulate in value.
Yeah. There you go. Well, interesting thing about those. So the Echo, I believe it was the Echo. Jimmy used that 12-string version of the Echo on the Australian Tour 72.
Yeah.
So he used that to play Tangerine.
12,
yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
And only on that tour and never again. So I don't know if that was, again, was it something he picked up in Australia or what? I don't know. Hey,
Shout out, guys. Hey, brother.
Good to see you, Brad. I'm glad you're watching the show with us. We love you,
guys,
buddy.
Guys, if you want, so the channel is going live later on. We've got Guitar Hack booked in, and you guys who are regulars of our channel, there's a lot of crossover. You guys will be familiar and aware of Guitar Hack, so he's going to come on. We're going to talk about Led Zeppelin 3. There's a bloody good chance Brad might be jumping on that show, guys. So that's in about 4 or 5 hours' time. So make sure you guys hit that show notification and jump on and join us. We're going to talk to Hack about Led Zeppelin 3. Sorry to interrupt, guys.
No, sounds good. Well, hey, I do need to go feed my children and kiss my wife, but it's been a great deal of fun talking with you guys. And if you guys have any other questions or if you think of anything after the fact, send me a message. I'll try to answer them. And, if you guys have any questions about Led Zeppelin 3, I'm happy to answer that too.
Drop the comments, guys, on the comment here on this video, because Alan will come back and add anything to any of your questions on here. If you are watching this channel here live now and you want Alan to come back and hang out with us on this time zone, again in the future, please ask him nicely. If you are watching the replay and you want Alan to come back and hang out with us and share his experience and his insight into Led Zeppelin, please ask, because the more people that are going to ask him, the more difficult it's going to be for him to say no. Alan, that's how we do things around here.
He asks you, Alan. He tells us.
But no, we do appreciate the insight that you've given us into the background of Led Zeppelin, and this is one of the great things about social media, isn't it, Rock Professor? That we can connect. We've got lots of people that we know in the chat. Charles Green in here. We've got Greg Zeppelin. We had Amanda Coombs in here as well. Everybody that's been with us from the beginning. We appreciate it. You guys are helping our channel. But more than that, though, I just want to hang out with guys and girls that just love talking about music and sharing the experience, because that's what it's about, Simon.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah. And it's been fantastic, Alan, to have you on. Thanks.
Wonderful. It's been great to see you guys
fun.
again, and again, let's send our love and thanks for Brad for joining us, and hope Brad gets to jump on. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
That's my guy right there. Well, hey, take care, guys.
I'll see you in the morning. Yeah,
Cheers, brother.
Alan, nice to see you, mate. Take care.
Unless my neighbor goes crazy and has a party, I hopefully won't be up at 4:00 in the morning, USA time.
No,
you're welcome anytime,
guys.
Thank you,
We'll
Alan.
catch up again soon.
Lovely.
Awesome.
Take care.
Cheers,
Alan. Bye.
Rock Professor.
There we
So
go.
we're going live too with the Rock Professor later on. Our usual time zone. We're going to be doing Beko La. So the channel's busy today. It's smoking. It's steaming. Can you see the steam rise
I know.
off?
You're going mad today. I was like, dear me, 4 shows in 24 hours. Go you.
I'll tell you the reason why. The reason why we have to do this is because of the time zones. Obviously, you know.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why Saturday and Sunday. So this time slot might become a little bit more, what's the word, familiar with you guys now, especially as we get some of these North American guests on. But I'm certainly looking forward to Brad coming on, the Rock Professor, and Alan joining us for more ZoSo shows, Simon.
Absolutely, yeah. It was really good to do a couple of ZoSo shows in and do that. And I think I might not be up at 3 a.m. for you with Hack. Yeah, that's a shame because
I'll pass on your regards though anyway. But no, we're certainly looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a quick shout out, brother, and we'll cruise?
Yeah, I'll do a quick shout out. So hey to Janice. Hi Janice, how you doing? Hope you're all right. I know you've been going through some troubles in the last couple of weeks, so our thoughts are with you. Got Keith Campbell, Robot Master Switch. Hey, Robot Master Switch. Got DK Wilson, new name in the chat. Brad, of course, Brad. Might see you later, Brad, hopefully. If you jump on, that would be great to see you. Charles Green, Helen Winter. Hi, Helen. We've got Johnny Bean. We've got Keith Campbell. Led Zeppelin, of course. Holly Lewis. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Gret. Charles Green. Going rolling back up. Amanda Coombs, of course. Helen Winter. Holly Lewis. Thanks, Holly, for joining. It's good to see you all. Nelson, of course. The mighty Nelson Rodriguez. Hobo Roadie. Thanks, Hobo Roadie. That's fantastic. Good to see you. Phil Byers as well. Nice to see you, Phil. And sorry, guys. It's Johnny Heartbreaker. Thanks, Johnny, for dropping by. Really good to see you. Jeff K. Tim Thomas, of course. Yeah, Tim Thomas. John ZD351. Good to see you, John. Looking forward to your corner hotel reports. That'll be good. Greg Roberts tune we had. I think that's probably everybody. Hopefully that's everybody. Hopefully I didn't miss you. Thanks ever so much for tuning in, guys. It's really good to see you. And we'll see you. I'll see you at in the morning for me.
Yeah, we'll be back here, guys. In a few hours. Well, like I said, we've got 2 shows to go. Look, it's humbling. The Rock Professor and I and Brad, we talk about this often. The support that you guys have been giving our channel by sharing our links on your social media accounts. The people from our Facebook groups who are watching, who are sharing our channel and watching our channel. The views that we're getting on our shows has been phenomenal. So we're not going to change. We're going to carry on doing what we're doing. If you guys want to be part of our shows, if you want to come on and hang out, because that's what our channel is about. It's about you guys in the chat. If you want to come on and be part of a show, pick a subject, let me know. Let the Rock Professor know. Let Brad know. Let Hoss know. And we'll get you on. We'll bump any show. We've said this from the word go, haven't we, Simon? We'll bump any show for anybody who's been with us in the chat.
As we like to say, everyone's got a story. So please come on and tell your story. Because we've had Keith Campbell on who had some amazing stories about meeting Van Halen and stuff. Really cool.
And just to echo that, if you watch the show with the Rock Professor later on this evening or early in the morning where you are with the Beko La show, we've got a special little announcement to make next week that somebody's going to join us. So even the Rock Professor doesn't know. So we're going to announce that We're going to announce that live.
I understand. I'm the hired hand.
We'll keep that one. We'll keep that one a secret for.
Keep that to
for
yourself.
Yeah, because
Yes.
that person might be in the chat. So yeah, it'll be a
Cool.
good surprise
Fantastic.
for everybody. You guys are awesome. Stay safe. I'm going to pass on the last word to the Rock Professor. We'll see you guys later.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks to Alan, who was fantastic and really knowledgeable, and that stuff is always mind blowing how much he knows.
Wow.
And you know, and imparts, and yeah, and is such a nice guy as well. So thanks, Alan, for coming on. It's been great, and I'm really pleased. I skipped out early on my curry and rushed home to be on. So I was really pleased about that. And
Thank you.
Thanks to
Thank you.
everyone, and we'll see you later. Take care. Take care all. Stay safe.